Are they going to say that calling someone racist isn't defamatory? Are they going to say that it's true? Are they going to say that I am a racist? I'm a racist because I thought that it was important that we have accurate training in the course materials.
Well, it's been almost 4 years, millions of tax dollars, canceled professionals, and hundreds of burnt churches later. And the reality is, 0 bodies have been discovered at the former Kamloops Indian Residential School, contrary to globally spread misinformation that claims that that was true. A lot of misinformation, which is still circulating today, including in our law society. And that's what today's report is about. I bring you an interview with lawyer Jim Heller, who's at the center of several battles that are trying to have the truth come out and stand strong in this area. Drea Humphrey here with Rebel News. And in case you don't know the background of this story or the amount of people who have been negatively impacted by the false 2021 claim that the remains of 215 children have been discovered in unmarked graves, some as young as 3 years old, by way of ground penetrating radar. If you don't know, I want you to know that after you're done watching this, you can go into our description box, click on the written report for this, and check out the hyperlinks. You'll even see my documentary that debunked that claim a year after it was made, and so much more. But today I interview, again, Mr. Jim Heller, so he can bring us the latest information when it comes to his libel suit against the Law Society of BC, because they, in their mandatory training, convince lawyers that that claim is true. So much so that probably is the reason why a lawyer was so clueless and representing his client and trying to have her have a lesser sentence. He claimed that 215 children's bodies had been unearthed. And when a Justice Shelley Fitzpatrick corrected the record and said, oh no, sorry, I think it's actually potential graves, well, all hell broke loose in the courtroom. We'll talk about that a little bit more with Jim Heller, but that's sort of the backbone of why he brought forth a resolution saying, okay, enough is enough. Can we just tell the truth? Can we just use the same or similar language that the band itself uses? Because of course they have backpedaled to say that it is probable graves. Actually, they don't even say graves anymore. They say probable anomalies. And we've told you that those anomalies are most likely the septic plot, septic field that was set up in the same area. And in fact, when they made it very clear that they're no longer saying 215 kids in the graves and they're using the probable anomalies, when they really made that clear, they followed that up. The band followed it up with accusations that anybody calling them out for the carnage that their false claim has had over these years, and now for our tax dollars not even going to properly investigate the false claim, well, they're just being white supremacists. You can't make this stuff up. So I'm going to talk to Jim Heller, obviously, about the latest with the case. I'm going to ask him his opinion of what we just saw happen in the so-called conservatives in British Columbia, the Conservative Party of BC, where its leader, John Rustad, gave Dallas Brody the boot after he was getting pressure to do so from the NDP because she had spoken out and said there were 0 bodies. And I tell you in a different report how he used a bogus excuse to go ahead and do that. So I'm going to ask him what Jim Heller thinks about that, because she actually, as the critic to Attorney General, had spoken about this lawsuit and the concerns that the Law Society is willingly spreading disinformation about residential schools. I thought we should all be against that, right? So I'm going to ask him about that. But there is something that is actually pretty significant here that you're going to learn in this report. And that is that Jim Heller has stumbled upon the fact that the Law Society knew that the 215 claim was false even before he brought forth the resolution. I mean, as they should. It's been debunked. But another lawyer in 2023, after Justice Fitzpatrick was treated so embarrassingly in the court system, went forward and hand-delivered them a letter. It's outrageous that the Law Society is digging their heels in. We're going to go through some of what's happening in their back and forth through the court proceedings and talk to Jim Heller about that now.
We filed the notice of claim against the Law Society, claiming that they defame me, particularly in a press release where they implied that anybody that, certainly the people that put up the resolution that I and my colleague did, were racist, but anybody that would support the resolution would be racist as well. And they also said that they implied that our resolution was vexatious, frivolous, and unnecessary. A vexatious litigant is someone, if someone is found, it's an actual status that a court can designate against someone that just files a lot of pesky, non-meritorious claims. And the court can rule that person's vexatious. And as I understand it, they're not allowed to bring any further lawsuits against anybody. So it's a really kind of damning thing that the Law Society, once again, they implied that we were that. So we filed our notice of claim. There were some reports, media reports. People saw that. I've heard from a lot of people, gotten just incredible support. There was incredible support in all the articles as well, like just almost like universal support, positive, under the voluminous comment sections. But anyways, I heard from this one guy. So he emailed me and he said that he was a retired lawyer who had noticed the original sentencing of this woman, Miranda Dick, not the Court of Appeal decision that I noticed last July, but earlier when she was first sentenced. And I guess there was some media coverage about how there had been an uproar in the courtroom. And because the judge had insisted on qualifying our level of knowledge about these unmarked graves, calling them potential, there was a little bit back and forth between her and this woman's lawyer, and then the courtroom just erupted, and all of this woman's supporters, some of them, apparently started screaming at the judge, calling her a racist, calling her a denialist, all of that kind of stuff.
What a circus. And I think at least one of them or more had to be ushered out of the courtroom too.
Yeah, that's right. Luckily the sheriffs were there. So anyways, I hear from this lawyer who told me that when he saw that, he wrote a letter to the Law Society and he sent me a copy of it. So this is back in March of 2023. And it's kind of incredible because in this letter, he flushes out and he very much centers on an ethical requirement that lawyers have and the Law Society would have as well, that I knew existed, and I knew it was part of, like in some of my commentary in the debate section before the resolution, I raised this idea that we have an obligation to kind of stand for judges. But what I wasn't really thinking about, which is what this lawyer pinpointed, was that we have a very express, stated, specific rule to that effect.
Yeah, he's essentially saying that lawyers in particular have a duty to come to a judge's defense if a judge is being unjustly labeled something they're not, correct?
Right. So he starts off his letter to the president of Law Society, and he says, I'd like to point out the following provision of the canons of legal ethics in the Code of Professional Conduct for British Columbia in your website. And then he gives a provision. It's 2.1b. Judges, not being free to defend themselves, are entitled to receive the support of the legal profession against unjust criticism and complaint. And then he asks, kind of rhetorically, whether or not things have slid so far in Canada that people can just slander judges with impunity. And he puts it on the Law Society. He says, I haven't seen your official response yet, your condemnation of what had happened there. And so he waited for a little bit. No, he had delivered it. And then he tells me that a few weeks later, because I've spoken with him since, a few weeks later, he gets a call from, he thinks it was the president of the Law Society, and that's who he addressed the letter to, who said that he had spoken with the chief judge of the province. Now, that's not Len Marchand. Len Marchand didn't become chief judge until December 23. Chief
Justice Len Marchand is the one who ruled in the appeal case for the Fitzpatrick case. Yeah,
that's right. Now, this is previous chief justice who apparently the president of the Law Society consulted with, and they tell this lawyer, look, we know about this. I'm not sure exactly what we're going to do about it. The lawyer says, well, can you keep me in the loop? And they say, no, it's not really that kind of a thing, but thank you for bringing this to our attention. And that was the end of it. He never heard anything further. So I think this is kind of big because it just means that the Law Society was really, really aware of not just what had happened in the courtroom, but also that some lawyer brought to their attention, what are you going to do about this? You should be protecting the judiciary. You should be, I mean, that's exactly what that rule is for when there are very sensitive political issues or things that have that kind of sensitivity to them, that we should be bravely defending our judges because they can't do it themselves. The Law Society did the opposite. I think one could argue that, first of all, they said nothing. They did absolutely nothing to support Judge Fitzpatrick then. And then when push came to shove, they jumped on this defamatory bandwagon and implied that anybody that thought that it was important to change the teaching and make it correct and accurate, and that the word potential was appropriate, that's just part of the racism in the profession. And so I think they're impugning the judge. Rather than defending the judge, they're impugning the judge.
There is just so much to unpack here and in so little time. But something that stood out to me when I read their response to your notice of civil claim was, again, them digging their heels in. So it's not one lawyer, it's not two lawyers, because there was two of you who brought forth the resolution, and it's not just three lawyers. Now it's society in many ways saying, hey, this is a claim that is false and people should know that. But you have the Law Society replying to you and just really nitpicking things. Instead of just saying, yeah, we are at this point pushing disinformation, they're saying, oh, well, you're using the word potential instead of probable. And they're saying there's basically historical truth. So they're sort of justifying like, well, there's a different type of truth. And that does sound very scary coming from the Law Society. What do you make of their response to your NOCC?
I'm just kind of going with the logic. Logic is kind of what's guiding me here. I'm a simple guy. I learned 2 + 2 = 4, and I've never forgot that. So we filed our notice, and I'm just wondering, what are they going to do? Like, what have they done all along? We asked them before we ever got to this point. I asked them for an apology. Don't call people racist. That's not very nice. And what are they going to do? Well, instead, they hemmed and hawed, and they eventually just said, well, we're not going to do that. They didn't really explain themselves. So then we filed this notice of claim, and I thought, so black and white. What are they going to do? Are they going to deny that they ever issued that press release? Wait a second, it wasn't us. Someone came in the middle of the night and put it out under our name. Are they going to say that they weren't talking about us? Well, of course they were. Are they going to say that calling someone racist isn't defamatory? Are they going to say that it's true? Are they going to say that I am a racist? I'm a racist because I thought that it was important that we have accurate training in the course materials. Anyways, I didn't know what they were going to do. Instead, what they came back with was 45 pages of subterfuge, dissembling, more defamatory attacks on me. It's really quite a document. So a lot of it's very extraneous. It's irrelevant. They're trying to expand the subject. They're trying to make this like the whole trial of the century as to whether or not any of what was alleged against the schools is accurate and true. So we wrote back a reply saying, come on, you're not pleading properly here. You're lawyers. You should know what you're doing. You shouldn't be using the pleading to just argue more evidence and to defame me further. And so that's the latest. That's what we've done.
Yeah, and just to be clear, they're not coming out and saying, hey, you're a racist, hey, you're a residential school denier. They're giving their weak positions and then attaching it to, other people essentially saying that if you question this narrative, you are a racist residential school denier. And that coming from the Law Society speaks volumes. And speaking of, the impact that this is, we saw, and I know you saw, the former critic to the Attorney General, MLA Dallas Brody, who was serving with the Conservative Party of British Columbia and now is serving as an independent because within her duty to do so and speak to, she also said,
enough is enough. The Law Society needs to correct this so that the record could be corrected in courts. And boy, did she have a storm, in some ways similar to what you're experiencing and others are experiencing. So I got to ask you, while I have you, what are your thoughts of the backlash that she received in her position when she called that out, and the fact that she's been booted out of the party since?
Yeah, well, it's absolutely horrible. And I didn't know Dallas beforehand, but I've met her since, and I think she's a really impressive, kind of straight talking. What's the old axiom that in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king? I feel like we're just saying some really obvious, commonsensical facts, and that becomes a big deal. It became a big deal for Dallas to just note the obvious, which is it's true. They haven't uncovered any bodies here yet. They might one day, they might not. We're coming up on the 4th anniversary of the May 27th, 2021 claim that they found 215 bodies, 215 surreptitious graves. And at one point, the band itself called them mass graves. They kind of equivocated on that. But I think it's really horrible that Dallas was vilified. I'm well aware of the irony of how Rustat himself, John Rustat, got kicked out of his party. Here's a funny thing. I think that I saw something that you did that noted this as well. So even as he threw Dallas under the bus and kicked her out of the party, John Rustat made a point of saying that he is carrying the torch that she had first lit. Remember, she wrote those 2 letters, one to the Attorney General and one to the Law Society itself. To the Attorney General, she said, both of them asking basically what's happening here. And John Rustat said, look, we're not letting that go. We also want to know what's happening with the Law Society's responsibility to maintain accurate course materials on such sensitive matters. And also, why is the Law Society agitating against lawyers? That's the word that he used. So I don't know, John Rustat, if you're paying attention, if you're a big Drea fan like I am, you happen to see
Maybe he was before my last report.
That was touching. You like the guy, but he's not doing the right thing here. Why does anybody's political career matter that much? I'm sure he's comfortable in life. He's an older guy. He doesn't need this. Why can't he just stand up for principle? Wouldn't that be so simple? And so maybe there's your position. I'm sure Dallas, she made the right decision. And I'm sure she can sleep, well at night. I don't know if he can.
Well, I did ask him about what you're talking about there. How and when can we expect to see him pick up the torch that Brody lit, to go ahead and say to the Law Society to fix this, when his own House Speaker believes fixing such a word that's connected to so much carnage in our country is abhorrent.
Her issue is about a word in a Law Society's education programming, and that's what she wants to go marching out to stand for, is abhorrent to me.
But everybody really wants to know, what is the latest with this case? You've had this back and forth, but where are you at now with the libel suit?
I'm a criminal lawyer. I'm not a civil lawyer. And according to, I guess, the Law Society's reply, I'm not a scientist either. But so I'm just taking guidance from my lawyer. I mean, we apparently, even filing a reply is kind of exceptional. We only did it because of the extraordinarily abusive and distorted elements in their defense. We thought that it was incumbent upon us to do something. So I don't know what happens next. I think I want to make this go faster than slower. I hope that they would I hope they read our reply and just say, you know what? Sorry, guys, we were wrong. Mea culpa. You're right. We had an obligation to protect the judge. Instead, we attacked the lawyers. We apologize. What can we do to make this right? I would hope that that's what happens next, Rhea. Otherwise, we have to just go down the golden road of litigation, wherever that leads.
At Rebel News, we don't back down from bringing you the other side of the story, even if it's uncomfortable to do so. But we can't do any of that without you. If you appreciate my reports on this topic, please support them. Help make them possible. You can do so by going to kamloopsdocumentary.com and donating what you can there, because that goes towards all the time and efforts to dig in to get the truth.